Coming up, non-title tag action with Scott and Rick Steiner. The Steiner brothers lock up with the undisputed World Tag Team Champions, John Van and Guy Cormier, the Originals.
The following non-title tag team contest is set for one fall with a 20-minute time limit. Introducing first, at a combined weight of 525 pounds, from Detroit, Michigan, here are Scott and Rick Steiner, the Steiner brothers.
The Steiner brothers have been mainstays in tag team wrestling since their days in WCW. And these two brothers and former tag team champs are one of the few teams that haven't clashed with the original as yet, but that is about to change drastically.
Scott and Rick Steiner, the genetic freak and the dog-faced gremlin, are almost certain to bring a real challenge to John Van and Guy Cormier, who are gonna be defending the undisputed World Tag titles at our very next cards, though, like they usually do. Sylvia Strong has them in this match with the Steiners as a tune-up before their title match.
True, but for right now, it is party time.
Their opponents, accompanied by Sylvia Strong, at a combined weight of 520 pounds, from Chicago, Illinois, the Chicago Hammer John Van, and from Staten Island, New York, the Staten Island Crippler Guy Cormier. They are WL Undisputed World Tag Team Champions, the Originals.
John and Guy have been keeping a low profile since their last match a couple of months ago with Sir Reggie Smythe and Tibor Bolescu, Team Euro. But they are back tonight, primed and ready to go for this match with the Steiners prior to their Tag Team Championship matchup at our next card, which is going to be RWL Championship Wrestling. And well, the team that has whipped the world 3 times has never met the Steiner brothers before, so this is going to be a wild one.
Not unlike Women's World Champion Dynamite Jeannie Parker, their title reign has been nothing short of amazing. And while they have what you can only call a bulletproof track record, John and Guy don't tend to drop to many matches, but facing former tag team champs like the Steiners, to men that are the stuff of legends, there's always the possibility, the chance for a potential upset. And that's what fans will be looking for, even if they're not expecting one.
Well, all right, GB, Mr. Inside Man into the Stronghold, what's the word here?
There's really nothing to say, Tex. Sylvie, John, and Guy go into this confrontation with the Steiner brothers confident that, first, the Steiners are gonna get beat, and that when they defend the titles next Monday at our WAL Championship in the main event, they're gonna win that 1-2.
All right, as this one gets underway, it's going to be Scott Steiner and the Chicago Hammer John Van starting this tag team matchup off. Referee Willie Johnson sounds the bell, and here we go. John Van rebounds off the middle rope, flying punch, takes Scott Steiner down to the canvas. Look at this, a cocky early pin right here. One, but just the one. Scott Steiner getting that left shoulder up hot, quick, and in a hurry. John misses with the spinning kick. Whips Steiner to the corner, misses with the, oh man, wound up, hung up in the tree of woe. Quickly gets himself out of that. Counters Scott Steiner with a shot, a punch to the midsection, a kick, a right, a left, and oh man, Scott Steiner's backed up, spun around by a hard right from John Van. The Chicago Hammer setting him up for some bad news here. Oh man, nasty shot right to the head. John Van rounds up Scott Steiner. Steiner being escorted to the Originals corner, head first into the turnbuckle he goes, but he counters, escapes the corner, locks up John Van, has him up. Nice suplex. Look at this. Whoa, shut up. John Van just pulled him out of the ring, said, come on over here, son. Scott Steiner with a chop across the chest of John Van, a kick to the midsection, and he's setting him up for the power bomb. He's got him all the way up. Oh man, right into the lip of the apron, right into the side of the ring. And John Van just took a couple of serious shots. Counters with a kick to the midsection, a running kick right to the face of Scott Steiner, takes him down. Referee Willie Johnson trying to get him back in the ring. Scott Steiner rolled back in by the Chicago Hammer, and he's making his way to the corner. Here comes the dog-faced gremlin, Rick Steiner. Locks up John Van, whips him to the ropes. Misses with the headbutt. John Van locks him up. Whips him to the corner. Hard shot to the midsection. Evaded by Rick Steiner. Steiner forces Van into the corner. A series of clotheslines right to the chest, and a fourth one takes John Van down to the canvas. Into a leg lock and a series of shots to the head from Rick Steiner. John Van catches a stomp to the face. Another one. Rick Steiner, real aggressive here, smashing the head of John Van into the mat. Steiner's got him all the way up. There's the running power slam from Rick Steiner. The dog-faced gremlin rounds up John Van. Vertical suplex as Scott Steiner finally finds his way back to his corner. John Van counters with a kick to the head. Tags in Guy Cormier. Here comes the Staten Island Crippler. Locks up Rick Steiner, quickly takes him down to the canvas. And it's a series of mounted punches. Rick Steiner trying to guard his head. Guy Cormier locks up Rick Steiner, escorts him to the Originals corner, smashes his head into the turnbuckle. Here's a tag. Here comes a double team from the Originals. Hard shot to the midsection from John Van as he takes control for his team. A series of shots to Rick Steiner. A set of driving knees into the midsection. John Van flips him over and drives the knee into the mat. The Chicago Hammer rounds up Rick Steiner. Locks him up, escorts him back to the corner. Forces him in there. Guy Cormier with a cheap shot and a rebound off the ropes, and a clothesline takes Rick Steiner down to the canvas. Here's a cover and a hook of the leg from John Van. One, but just a one. John Van already busted open, goes after Scott Steiner, catches a knee. As Rick Steiner, whoa! A shoulder takes Scott Steiner out to the floor. Rick Steiner goes after Guy Cormier. He's got him up in a bear hug. Not going to get a submission, not even a legal man. He's just trying to wear him out. And John Van makes his way towards Rick Steiner. They lock it up. Steiner quickly taken to the ground. Another set of mounted punches, this time from the Chicago Hammer. John Van setting up a little project here. Oh, man, drops both knees right into the floor. Guy Cormier still hanging out on that barricade, getting his act together. As Rick Steiner is rolled back inside the ring. Steiner trying to make his way to the corner. John Van prevents that from happening. There's a kick, a hard right, a chop across the chest, goes behind, German suplex to Rick Steiner. The Chicago Hammer with the claw, with the brain claw. They've won a lot of matches that way. Scott Steiner interceding on behalf of his brother, but Rick Steiner says, no worries, bro, I got it myself. A couple of shots to the midsection and a running spear takes Van down to the canvas. A cover, one, but just a one. Hell, not even a one, says the referee. Double axe handle across the back from Rick Steiner to John Van. Rick Steiner rounds up John Van, escorts him to the Steiner brothers corner, smashes his head into the turnbuckle. John Van counters, catches a cheap shot from Scott Steiner. A kick to the midsection to Rick Steiner. He's got him up, but Rick Steiner quick with the counter. Drives a shot to the back of the head of John Van. John Van locked up by Rick Steiner. He is setting up a project here. Here we go. He's gauging the weight. He's got him all the way up. Vertical suplex to the Chicago Hammer. As Rick Steiner slowly makes his way to his corner. He's got to make that tag. But John Van puts a stop to it again. They are keeping Rick Steiner separated from his brother here. John Van catches a set of elbows to the midsection from Rick Steiner. Steiner with a belly-to-belly suplex to John Van as he steps out, and here comes Scott Steiner, the big bad booty daddy. I do love saying that. It's so funny. All right, here we go. Here's a tag to Guy Cormier. A running kick to the face to Scott Steiner. Cormier catches the kick to the midsection. Scott Steiner with a forearm across the face. Guy Cormier sweeps the leg, takes him down, rebounds off the middle rope, misses with the flying kick, misjudged the distance. Scott Steiner going to make him pay with a German release suplex. Steiner locks up Guy Cormier, takes him to the Steiner brothers corner. Here's a tag to Rick Steiner. Here comes a double team punch. A kick, to the midsection. Scott Steiner watching his brother work as Guy Cormier is pitched out towards center ring. Rick Steiner making his way all the way up to the top turnbuckle here. Waiting for Guy Cormier to stand up. Here we go, double axe handle right across the head of Guy Cormier as Scott Steiner is brought back in on the tag. Guy Cormier locks up Scott Steiner, hard whip to the ropes, has him up, drives in a knee, and a spinning kick to the back of the head takes him down. Here comes the Chicago Hammer, John Van, again, as Scott Steiner gets back to a standing position. Running kick to the face one more time. The Originals definitely firing on all cylinders here. Scott Steiner slams him face first to the canvas. Steiner with a kick. John Van says, no, you don't. But look at this, quick counter. Belly to back suplex from Scott Steiner. Steiner with a vertical suplex on John Van. Here's a cover and a hook of the leg. One. Guy Cormier right there to break up the pin. Scott Steiner and John Van take it to the outside. A clothesline that just spun Scott Steiner ass over tea kettle. A wrist clutch knee to the head from the Chicago Hammer, John Van. Van drives Scott Steiner into the barricade. Gathers him back up. Scott Steiner counters with a kick. Locks up John Van. Look at this. Chicken wing suplex. A whole lot of suplexes coming from Scott Steiner here. As John Van and he battle on the outside with the referee counting. Scott Steiner makes his way back inside the ring. John Van looks a little pissed off. Scott Steiner goes after Guy Cormier, catches a shot to the face. John Van from behind delivers the shot to the back of the head of Scott Steiner, follows that up with a stomp to the arm. The Chicago Hammer makes his way to the top turnbuckle. Scott Steiner slowly stands himself up. Beautiful flying kick right across the face of Scott Steiner from the Chicago Hammer, followed up with another stomp to the face. Look at this. Whoa! What a power bomb right there, and he turns it around. Oh, man, drove a knee right into the head, too. Pretty combination, but Scott Steiner counters with a couple of lefts, gets himself disengaged from John Van, makes his way back to his corner, tags in Rick Steiner. John Van standing there waiting for him, drives a knee right into the head of the dog-faced gremlin. Rick Steiner being escorted to the Originals corner. And John Van's already pretty messed up. Here comes Guy Cormier on the tag. Here comes a double team from the Originals. Hard whip to the ropes for Rick Steiner. Double shoulder tackle. Takes him down as Guy Cormier takes over for his team. Drives a knee into the head of Rick Steiner. Steiner rounded up for another one. Guy Cormier backs out, turns it back over to John Van. The undisputed World Tag Team Champions definitely in control of things at the moment. And they're looking pretty good. If they can do this at their next matchup, they will still be undisputed World Tag Team Champions. John Van drives another knee into the head of Rick Steiner. Follows that up with a stomp to the leg. Takes himself out of the equation. Brings in Guy Cormier. Guy Cormier charges. Rebounds off the ropes. Misses with the clothesline. Rick Steiner counters with a kick. Guy Cormier counters with a kick. They lock up. Rick Steiner whip to the ropes. Head-on collision with no result. Cormier whip to the ropes. Rick Steiner fails to connect. Locks up, catches a kick to the midsection from Guy Cormier. Steiner whip to the ropes again. Another big-time collision. A driving knee into the head from Guy Cormier. Here's a cover and a hook of the leg. 1, 2. Well, that's a wrap. The Originals picking up a win over the Steiner brothers by pinfall.
The time, 11 minutes and 15 seconds. Your winners by pinfall, the Originals.
John and Guy doing it one more time, picking up a win over the Steiner brothers. as they get ready to defend the Undisputed World Tag Team Championships next Monday at RWL Championship in the main event. And well, that is going to be one you're not going to want to miss, so be sure you're with us on Monday night when RWL Championship starts. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we got one more major tag team match in our main event tonight, and that highlights the Mexican Monolith, the Triple Crown, King of the Monsters, Warlord Santos, in a tag team match against the Sectarians. And well, he's got a mystery partner. Stick around to find out who that is.